All right. Well, good afternoon, Jen. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm super
My
excited.
pleasure, Aqua.
Yeah. So everyone, Jen is someone I met a few years ago. I think it's been about almost 2 years ago,
Yeah.
on a coaching course. And towards the end of the course, I mentioned that I wanted to get more coaching experience. And so she introduced me to this amazing co-op that she developed under her Conspiring Coaching brand. So Jen, I would just love for you to take maybe a second to introduce yourself, and then we'll get into some of the questions.
Okay. Yeah. I'm Jen Walper Roberts, and I run a coaching practice called Conspire Coaching. And as you mentioned, Aqua, I founded the Conspiring Women Peer Coaching Co-op. And I think what's cool about this conversation is the co-op is all about this values of people being able to connect from any background, from anywhere in the world that you and I share, about, almost having this a sense of identity of being human and being able to connect with anyone. And the co-op is based around those values that I think really brought us kind of together, kept us in contact after our course.
Yeah, no, definitely. Maybe it'd be great for us to maybe talk a little bit about how we met. So I mentioned it a little bit, so a coaching course. And then after the coaching course, I joined your co-op. And then after that, we had an opportunity also to work together, or we're currently working together in a way as well.
Yeah. And I think I remember, I don't even know why we ended up kind of initially connecting about it really, but but I remember when we first talked about collaborating more after you participated in the co-op, I really enjoyed that conversation because we were talking about being hyphenated identities and I don't know, we talked about all the world's problems. And when I first met you through the course, it was you were in Kenya, right? And then Lagos, and I had recently moved from the US to the UK where I now live, and I think we just had a lot to share about being people who have lived in multiple places and what that, how we experience the world that way. And how we have these values about women supporting each other. I don't know. It just seemed like very natural you wanted to also get some experience through some of the stuff that I was doing. And we started just helping each other out in that way.
Yeah, no. Maybe it'd be a good time to maybe just explain a little bit more about sort of the Conspiring Women's sort of co-op and what you've been able to do with it over these years.
So the co-op is, so I've been a coach for almost a decade, and I coach mission-driven women to thrive in all areas of their lives. But really my ultimate aim is to support women leaders to make a difference in the world. And over the years, I have so many amazing women in my network. I thought I wanted to create something where they could connect with each other on a deep, meaningful level. And I also think that coaching sometimes is really exclusive and only offered to people at the top, whose companies are paying for it, or if people have the means to pay for it on their own, but it's pretty pricey. And I think coaching is just so healthy. I don't know about you, but since the moment I started training as a coach, having those tools to reflect and be intentional, I think are mind-blowing and for my personal life and everything. So I just thought it's really important for anybody, but particularly for the people I want to support, to have regular, affordable, accessible ways to hold a space for that reflection and have really good listening. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah. And as someone who's actually been a part of the co-op, I think that's definitely what you've been able to create over these years. I had the opportunity to, gain better coaching skills, learn a lot more about how to engage with different types of people. And I'm sure I've mentioned this to you, but I think for me, having the opportunity, I think now I've done it maybe two or three times to go through the co-op. I just get so much confidence because it's just it's an opportunity to engage with very different people that I've had an opportunity to engage with in the past. And so I think there's a lot of confidence that comes from coaching people in that space and having the opportunity also be coached. I'm always really excited to work with the coach from the co-op because they just see things from such a different perspective. And it's a really, really, for me at least, it's been a really great opportunity, I think, to learn and to grow in different ways.
What do you think is different about peer coaching from working with a coach that you've hired to work with you, or from the other perspective when you're coaching someone who's paying for your services versus somebody who's matched in this way?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great question. I would say one of the things that's really nice about sort of the community that you've been able to create is all the resources that you sort of put together. I think makes it just, I guess, really effective. I really do enjoy having those pre-reflection sheets, thinking about what I want to get the most out of, what do I want to get out of the conversation. And so I think that's really, really helpful. And I think that also by just calling it peer, there's just a lot less pressure in some ways. And I think that you're also sort of breaking down this hierarchy of, someone's an expert versus not an expert. And I know saying that, right, the type of coaching that we practice already, coaches aren't meant to be experts.
Right. We're not supposed to be an expert.
We're not supposed to be experts, but that still does kind of come across a bit. Especially if you're working with a coach who is very obviously much older or much more experienced than you. So that's what I really appreciate about this. There's this leveling. I think I just feel like I'm very much on the same level of someone that I'm engaging with, even though I am, a professionally certified coach as well.
Yeah. And what I also really value is sometimes you'll have somebody who's really senior, really like advanced in their leadership, and they select someone to coach them who's way younger.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so beautiful. You don't see that happening in the world naturally all the time. And I like any container in which you can break up all those dynamics of like how things are supposed to be and the hierarchies and the rigidity, and just let people select who they feel compelled to want to spend time with, based on, something they read about them or just something they find interesting. So I like that. I like that too. And I think you and I kind of both share liking connecting with people who resonate with those kinds of openness and not boxing people in to rigid categories. I feel like we've talked about that so many times.
No, agreed. And I think once again, that just comes back to sort of how much energy you've put into creating that container, right? Because co-op is not for everyone, right? And I think that you have to sort of buy into this idea of being willing to look beyond some of your, some of the things that you might have stereotyped in the past or some of your thoughts. And so for me, like I said, I've always really enjoyed, and it's always been such a diverse group of individuals that I've had a chance to either coach or be coached by.
Yeah. It's great to hear that you feel that way in the space. That's really important to me.
Yeah. So let's maybe talk a little bit about some of what you do outside of the co-op. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you actually came to the idea of wanting to work with mission-driven women, because I think that's so powerful.
Well, my whole career before starting coaching was mission-driven work.
Okay.
So I started out in New York working with, I've always been really interested about issues of equality, racism, access to education, access to careers. So my first employer was Sponsors for Educational Opportunity, SEO, in New York. And I used to run mentoring and volunteer programs. And there's so many themes. Mentoring and coaching have so many similarities. So that's been a real theme about connecting people to support others. But my intention, I studied policy, politics and policy undergrad. So I always thought I would go to New York for a year and kind of get up close to poverty and inequality, and then go back to DC and get a policy job, which is a great route that sometimes I still wonder if I should ever go back to. But I kind of just loved being there. I loved New York. I loved the families. And the more I learned, the more I realized there was so much work to be done, so much inequality, so much brokenness in the system, and things I knew theoretically really came to life. And I just, felt really connected. And I stayed there for a very long time. And then I broke away and did my master's at City University of New York, Brew College, for a master's in public administration. Kept working at SEO on a contract basis. And then eventually I moved to London and worked for a branch of SEO that does careers. So I got to travel across the UK, looking for talented kids, young adults from more diverse backgrounds than you typically would, underrepresented backgrounds, and invite them to learn about working in some of these really competitive jobs in the city of London. And that was an amazing way to get to know the UK, through this lens of people who probably hadn't been exposed to those careers. And it was just the other side of SEO, but that was training and coaching and internship support so that they could get full-time offers. And that kind of got me into an executive level of leadership as well. So I don't know, this is my whole career journey, but then I returned. Yeah. So this access and equality and coaching and training and mentoring have been kind of the really consistent theme, whether it's in education or at the highest levels of wealth, just sort of looking at what you can do to break down some of the barriers. And then there's a public sector consulting firm. And my job there was to run some of the national resource centers for the training and technical assistance for grantees doing community-based work all across the country. So they got grants from the government to improve their ability to serve low-income communities and to build healthy communities. And we had a mentoring children of prisoners grant that we worked with, a whole bunch of different grants to support mentoring youth and also community resiliency. So through that, I got to work with leaders of these community-based organizations. Okay. And mainly remotely. We did conferences and whatnot, but all different kinds of action learning and coaching, and one-on-one leadership coaching. And then I realized what I really love is that, getting the people who are out there doing the work, giving them this reflective space, helping them use themselves as their best instrument to make the most of these funds, to make the most of these organizations. And it's those connections and conversations with people that I kind of fell in love with, and it clicked that was coaching. And so then I trained from there.
Amazing. And so what sort of led you to jump from, working for someone else full time to having your own business?
Well, I was working in this consulting firm full time, and when I had my first child, and going back to the firm, it was not easy. In the US, we were lucky to get 3 months partially paid maternity leave. So the baby was like super young, and I was pumping milk under my desk in an office with a window. And at that time, there was no mandatory rooms for pumping. And the culture of the work was still very much, that's about the time you put in. Right. And, at that point, it felt really, really stressful. And then not too much longer after that, I became pregnant with my twins. So I already had a baby, and I had 2 more coming. And while that's where I felt like, oh, this is that crunch that women feel. And right away, so I trained while I was actually on bed rest. I had to work from home. So I also did my coaching certificate remotely. And by the time the twins were born, I took a few months off and started playing around with taking clients. And I told myself, I'll only start my business if I can pay. I had to earn my way through my coaching training to prove to myself that I could do it. I started taking clients before I had any certification.
Amazing.
And because you don't need a certification to coach.
Right. I think that's something that a lot of coaches have to work through. Like, the idea is, I need this, I have to finish this first, and then. So that's amazing. You were able to do it before. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a way better coach now that I've had a lot of training, but I was able to earn my way, and that proved to me, oh, people will actually pay for me to do this. I have enough now that I could do this.
Yeah.
And I was able to pay for my training that way. And then gradually I just decided I could do it. And I ramped down my work at the consulting firm and ramped up my coaching work. And immediately, the first thing that I did within the first few months was start a program for really busy women to connect, a small group coaching program called Women Leaders Emerging, for women, really busy women juggling a lot, who didn't want to give up on their own leadership development and their own career. So we had our sessions at 9:00 at night. I said, come in your pajamas, bring a glass of wine, and access it. At the time, remote coaching like this wasn't the thing, right? Like now we're all doing it because of the pandemic, but at the time there wasn't anything like it. And so over the years we ran 20 of these coaching circles, Women Leaders Emerging.
Wow.
Yeah. Because a very intense, like 8-month-long program to redesign your whole life and career, like design the next chapter together with a collective group of women helping you do it. So that's how I started. And it was never a question of who I wanted to serve, because my whole background was in people who wanted to make the world better. Those were my people.
Oh, wow. I love that. I had no idea about the women's circles, and that's amazing. And is that something that you continue to do now, or have you sort of transitioned it into more of a one-on-one thing?
Well, I ran them, and I had other coaches working for me running those programs.
Okay.
Yeah. Amy Haynes and Sarah Crowell. So they should get full credit for that, because they were amazing. And we ran through the curriculum a lot of times, and we moved to the UK in 2016, and I was finishing up some of those cohorts. That's when I decided to start the co-op. I thought these cohorts are so intense and very time consuming, really intense. And I felt like I wasn't loving the journey as much as I had when I first started doing it, because I've been through the curriculum so many times. And I wanted something new, but I still wanted to continue to connect women in a meaningful way. And the co-op was a result of that, like wanting to keep connecting people, but not in the same way. I still use the Women Leaders Emerging curriculum with my private clients one-on-one. And a lot of it is up on the co-op resource library.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you provide that to everyone who's going through that as well. Amazing. Okay. I wasn't aware of that. Okay. I'll have to go check it out now.
A lot of the resources on the resource library about career transition and designing your next chapter come from that curriculum. Yeah.
Wow. No, it's amazing. So, I mean, it sounds like to me sort of, wanting to sort of work with the same people, but it sounds like that you also are not afraid to pivot, which is something that I know I've had trouble with, and I'm sure a lot of other people out there have had trouble with. So what is it that you're feeling, or what is it that you see that tells you that, nope, okay, this was amazing, but I can close it and move on to something else, and it can also be amazing?
I think I've learned that if I try and think of an idea, it won't work. But if I focus on who I am and what my mission is, which is about creating connectedness and revealing oneness, like helping everybody tap into the truth that we're all just part of one big system, one big universe. That when I really get, this is such a coachy thing to say, but when I really get present to my mission and breathe with it and stay with it, then I don't have trouble coming up with what the next thing is. And it's as simple as that, but that's something that I feel like coaching has really helped me know how to do. So, and any idea where I've just thought, I'm going to strategically think about this in my head and map it all out. If I don't feel it in that really, mission-centered place, it never works. So that's what's the next expression of who I am in the world and what I want to create.
I love it. It sounds like you have like a North Star already, and it's just about, okay, what else will align with that? This mission I've selected for myself. Wow. I mean, do you have any suggestions for people who are maybe looking for that mission or looking for that North Star for themselves?
Well, yeah, I think first of all, engaging in work to help you get to know yourself.
Great. Yeah. So just trying things. Yeah.
But I mean, I think the simplest thing is to think about those times where you have in the past felt like your true self.
Okay.
Where you feel like what you're doing might not be easy, but you feel lit up because it's how you just feel authentically like you're being the best you that you can be, not someone else's measure of the best you, but your own. You like who you are, you know. And when you think about those experiences, take a look at the words that come up. What's happening around you? What are you creating just by being that self? And I think that is not looking for something in the future, like the North Star. It's actually just knowing that this is what brings you to life. This is what you want to be the cause of in the world. And that's your mission, you know, just keep doing that.
I love that. Yeah. And I also like how you're talking about it to bring it to the present. Cause I think you're right. Sometimes we always think to ourselves, oh, that's the next thing I will do. I'll do that in the future, but you can do it now. And it's possible to start using it now.
The thing about having that mission or the purpose is that you can call on it at any time. You know, if you're feeling low, you can say like, well, how, in this moment, how can I live my mission? Who am I being right now? Am I living according to like who I want to be and what I want to create in the world? Or am I hiding from that for some reason, and why? So to me, that's been the most important coaching tool, like self-counseling tool to just sort of get back to being me when I'm in a funk or not quite sure where to go. But it doesn't always, it's not like always you can just the idea will come in that moment, that one instant. It's just being with that question constantly invites in the ideas, you know, invites in the things that you want to do.
Yeah. Do you have any other suggestions for people in terms of activities or things they can do to make sure they're in a place where they can feel reflective and stay present?
Surround yourself with people who are also striving to live, you know, with their higher minds or with their best selves. Stay away from the people who just want to drag down and close off possibilities and, you know, keep everything small. I think that's what I think being connected to people like you, people that now that I realize how important it is to stay open. But I think just attracts people in who are also on that kind of a similar journey. And then you think it's just normal, right? You think that's how everybody is because you've attracted that around you.
Fair. Yeah.
I don't know. Does that make sense to you?
I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, you know, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is, you know, you don't have complete control over you don't have complete control over everyone around you, but you can be a bit intentional about how you spend your energy, right? So if you're aware that maybe you're around somebody who maybe makes you feel a certain way, you don't necessarily have to spend as much time around them, right? Or you can put boundaries up. And just being aware that everyone is not always going to bring the best out of you, I think is something that I'm starting to learn, and thinking about it in the most constructive way possible. And then, you know, with the people and the time I have more control over, how can I make sure I surround myself with people, once again, that bring out the best in me, are willing to have these conversations, even if we don't agree. I think that's been something that's been really interesting. And now, especially during this COVID period, right? You're very self-selective of who you're around, right? And who you might also reach out to. So it's a very curated experience.
It is a really curated experience. And there was something that you said not too long ago that I think reminds me of this, was about how, I don't know, I was surprised. We were talking about climate change and through that conversation, it made me reflect on how we have to manage our energy, because turns out a whole lot of people just aren't interested in caring about like the climate collapsing and like these big things that I care about, you care about, and that it's not even on the radar. And I think that I think you're exactly right. Like, it's not that you don't talk to people anymore who don't care about what you're interested in. It's just being really important that you do have people who will, if you're like passionate about something, they can hold it, and that they're going to say, yeah, go with that passion and care as much as you do. And when you're empathetic, if you don't have people who like get it and who will empathize with you and who will like think about these big things, you can really suffer. And I think that's so important about creating spaces where people can put their hand up and say, yeah, I care about the world passionately. That's why I do my work. That's why I live my life. Because it's a little bit self-protective in the world when you know that actually a lot of people don't care, and it takes a lot of energy to manage those conversations.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point, right? You can have multiple tribes, right? And that's something that I've started to learn as well as I've gotten older. Like, it's okay to have friends for this and that sort of thing, and finding and continuing to evolve, and that you can evolve and you can find people to evolve with you, or you can find new groups as well. It's okay.
What are the kinds of people that you're evolving to?
Like, who am I evolving to, or?
Yeah. Who are the people that you feel like are entering into your world, that you are curating into your life?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I really just like my family. I think my parents are amazing. I mean, so right now in terms of curating, I definitely spend probably too much time with my parents and having conversations with them and recognizing that I am so much like them in some ways. And I think that's really interesting. And hopefully I'll be able to have a conversation like this with one of them. I'm trying to figure out how to make it happen. But I think this COVID period has just helped me just recognize, like, my sister's also here as well. And it's just amazing to be able to have conversations with them and recognize that they actually kind of really are my tribe. I am very much, I think, a product of my parents. But I think in a very positive way. I mean, of course I can see some of the negatives as well, in some ways, or things that could work better potentially that I might've inherited from them or learned from them. But for the most part, I definitely think that they're my people for sure. And
how
that's
lucky
really nice
to be able to spend your time during COVID with people that you love so much, and to have that time to reflect on your relationship with them and how you choose them. You're not just born with them.
Nope, I would totally choose
you
them.
like them.
I think, I definitely think that I'm very lucky and very privileged for that. But maybe my parents were just very intentional about it. I don't know. They might've had this whole experiment, and they just were experimenting on us. And this is sort of how it turned out. Yeah, they did a good job.
Good topic for an interview.
I'll have to ask, one of them, if I'm able to get one of them on. Yeah. How about for you in terms of what you've been able to do with your time during COVID? What have you been intentional about or tried to focus on?
Well, it's been an intense time. I have 4 children.
Yeah.
So I didn't mention the 4th one in the career journey, but there's 4, and they're ranging from age 4 up to 10. Just the little one just turned 4. So this period's been really intense. It's been homeschooling. Some days are more homeschooling than others. Some days are like watching movies or everybody breaking down and getting really upset. But some really good days of board games and nature walks. And the good days have been really good, mostly spending time outside, I would say. And then I switch over and put my work hat on at 3, from 3 till 9. My husband Jim and I shift off. But I would say having a break from running around to activities for six people in our family. So running around to birthday parties and negotiating what we are and what we aren't going to do, and the scheduling and sports, and, just all the trappings of life that you think you have to do, all that's gone. And it's just been like, what do we do today? And with each other. So we've all learned a lot. I feel like we've all gotten to know each other better.
Yeah. And so, moving forward, as I think things are kind of opening up, what is it that you think you might do differently?
Things are opening up, but like closing down and
right. Yeah. It's a bit,
it's a bit scary. Right now, the thing that we all realized as a family was how clean the air has been, and how nice it's been to go on bike rides safely. So as a family, we've become kind of activists about trying to advocate for our our neighborhood to be,
I love that.
for travel in our neighborhood to be just more sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of our family project now to advocate for that. And we've started a whole neighborhood committee and everything.
I love it. 6 people
already. Yeah. We're all campaigning. I, people have been talking about what's the new possibility of how we recover. So I really want to be part of that force of people that's saying, no, we can't go back. I don't want to go back to normal.
Yeah.
I want to go back to a healing planet and values of mutuality and not just the success and me and individualism. I want there to be more of an us thinking of collectively about what we want for the world. That's how I raise my kids. That's how we raise our kids. Yeah. And that's, I guess that's what's most important. And if my work has to align with that.
And I think it definitely does. I mean, I see it with what you do with us in the co-op, and I think that's absolutely amazing. And I think this is also a good point to maybe sort of end with, do you have any advice sort of based on your experience, based on what you've seen that you'd like to share?
I think I have this sort of mantra from my Jewish tradition, from an old, one of our famous rabbis, Rav Nachman of Breslov. And it's the whole entire world is a very narrow bridge. Okay. And the important thing is not to be afraid. And that, I think, for anyone who's doing something that might be unexpected or going with a passion, doing something that, especially if you want to make a difference in the world. And I'm not saying I'm making such a huge difference in the world, but like I try and live that way. I think the key to it is not being scared of what other people think, not being scared that you have to stay on the typical path.
Yeah.
Not being scared to disappoint people who had different expectations of you. Go for it.
Love that. Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. I've learned so much more about you, and I'm really excited that we had a chance to do this together.
Me too. And here's to many more conversations. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.